Boys, what is up and welcome back to another Lost Skies Skywatch update. Today we are covering an extension of content for past editions as well as some newer renders in preparation for the upcoming trailer that the devs are working on. But first we'll start off by talking about the character team's models. First, as we can see, they put together a nice pair of male and female undersuit models. This, as they say, will work as the Gaul basic life support starting outfit at the beginning of the game, and provides little to no protection, which I personally think has a very interesting and unique design, but at the same time it kind of confused me a bit story-wise. For those of you that may have seen some of the previous Skywatch update covers, we are told a small amount of information regarding the different civilizations, one being the more known Saborian society, which placed high importance on geometric and aesthetical designs, which became very advanced technologically but placed much of their societal importance on superiority above all else, as well as the very little known Gaul society. And as far as we've been told, the Gaul society had tech that was much more useful than aesthetical, and as such, weapons and tools were more practical. What they mentioned before was that likely the player would start in the outskirts of Saborian society, where many of their own outcasts would be, but we were never told what the historical background of our player was. So when the devs mentioned here that the starting undersuit would be Gaul in nature rather than Saborian, it made me kind of question that, as I would have otherwise assumed that the starting gear would be Saborian, which, for those of you who are also curious about how the devs plan to make the story develop, I think knowing this fact could give slight insights into the background of our character once more information is shared later on. The next thing that the team was working on is their high detail render for the marketing material, as well as detailed renders for a mining tool. Before, we had seen early gray boxes and placeholder shaped animations for it, but now what we have appears to be a finished model for it that looks very sick. Next up is some work from their creature team. Aside from the work on the Nautilus we saw in the last Skywatch update, the creature team has been working on concepting new creatures for the game. First up of which is work on a hermit crab inspired creature and an early jellyfish concept, with the jellyfish concept being pushed a little bit further into multiple colorations as we see here. We next covered their concept work for the cave creature, which they furthered into these final drawn A, B, and C variations and then fully took into the gray boxes and rendered animations. First of which shows the cave creature crawling forward from different rotating angles, then one doing a cool burrow animation, which I would assume is for the spawning or underground movement of the position of the creature. And lastly, one of the creatures is performing a jump animation from different rotated angles as well. Moving on to the ship team, as we saw in the previous weeks, they had started their modeling for their prefab ship, and as of now they had fleshed out a bit more of the modeling and rendering for some of the winged and support parts, and given us a gif of the prefab ship flying in the sky as well. Although it still is not completely finished, the team is actively working on UV lighting and reflections, as well as light tracking and texturing effects for different materials that they're adding to comprise the ship's material and parts. Next to that, the team has been working on Legacy Cannon for Lost Skies, and gives us some nice images on the detail work done, where we can see a lot more of the rust prefabs for the cannon, which make it, feel more real. We also have some videos of them experimenting with different shaders that can be used for texture panels versus proper UVs, as well as how the ships will look in different lighting, which showcase all the decal work that they're doing. And lastly, we have updates regarding the work on the island team. First off, they mentioned that their initial pass to Tutorial Island is now in game, and while not in its final state, we get a beautiful image here showcasing the island, intentionally not showing off all the good stuff because they don't want to spoil too much publicly. But to those of you who have signed up for open development on the Lost Skies Discord, it seems as though you can now openly explore the island, and for those who haven't and would like to possibly be selected, I will have the link posted in the description below. This week we are also seeing some minor changes to the data relay puzzles. In the original concept idea, the relay would have been operated remotely by the character, utilizing the Gaul creation disk that we went over in a previous update. But due to some issues with that design, they decided that mechanically and practically it made more sense to be operated manually, where they show those changes in the concept designs below, showing how there will be a small ladder up to the machine where the player can orient the direction of the data relay for the puzzle. Something else good to mention is their work on textures. I for one am really happy to see this, as I think having more texture options for biomes woods, and other materials would help the game look more flushed and vibrant. And in reference to this, we are shown some detailed test textures with pretty wood, some kind of like black, cool marbled stone, and a texture that's like metallic and reflective material, but it's also testing out the metal damage model that's being worked on, which is in a very early state, I can't stress that enough, but could be applied for a range of uses, possibly for damaged assets of ship parts, walls, or other paneling, or even just for some designs that they may work on later in different game editions. And finally, this week they gave access to the Lost Skies Island creator to the open development community, where they are already seeing some impressive content being made, the first of which it seems like someone designed a crashed ship, as well as an old Gaul or Saborian mine with some cool assets on the doors, and a bunch of other pretty photos showing off the different landscapes of different people's islands. In reference to this, I am curious if they will inevitably decide to make the islands that we can still play on the World's Adrift island creator transfer over, or even compatible or not, but I imagine for the time being that wouldn't be something they would work on until later, even if they did, because they're probably likely still trying to flesh out the work on the game itself, but nonetheless, I would personally enjoy seeing some of the awesome islands that we saw in World's Adrift work in Lost Skies as well. And to leave you with something to think about, I want to ask those of you watching what kind of puzzles you would like to see in the game, or even what types of puzzles they could work on in addition to the data relay that we've seen so far. But sadly, that is all I have for today, so I want to thank you all so much for watching, and have a beautiful rest of your day. Peace.